Last time we did an interview, we had known each other for about 2 days. That was 2 years ago now. A lot has changed. I figured that now would be a really good time to sit down again and kind of go over the average perspective. So, what's changed for you in the last 2 years, personally?
I know it's kind of funny because last time we did it, like you said, it was just a couple of days, and now we're like best friendos.
Exactly.
So it's a little bit funny in that sense. But since then, I think pretty big stuff happened since then. In terms of like overall life, I think just broadly, the war is still on. Like the bombing is still on. You still live in Kharkiv. You suffer through exact same things pretty much as I did back then. And in that sense, kind of like everything is the same, but also in other senses, like a lot of things shifted since then. Politically, especially in the United States, for example, a lot of things shifted in the sense of how we see the future, how exactly we see the war ending, and all of that. I think that is significantly changed, and also people's attitudes, I think, and overall. Feeling, I guess, has changed. Not the circumstances as much as the feelings around them.
And what has been the feelings here in Ukraine over these last 2 years? Obviously, it's been a wide range since I first came here.
Yeah, I think you can probably judge yourself since you are, hanging around talking with people. But for other people, I would say the shift is quite substantial. It's easy to see. Mostly, it's just that the attitude is much less. Depressing is not the word I would probably go for, but it's more apathetic, a little less joyful, a little less hopeful. Maybe not even a little, maybe even a lot, mostly because of how the war has been going this entire time. I would say the lack of actual tangible and reliable support from our allies have dampened everyone's spirits quite a while, especially things like limitation on long-range strikes, for example, that Biden removed basically a couple days, like a week or something before Trump came into power, maybe 2 weeks tops. So that's definitely dampened the spirits. I told you personally about it, but I think many people heard it in some way from Ukrainians, that you just sit in your corridor and glide bombs, cops we call them, right, fall all over the city, all over the place, no rhyme or reason, but a lot of them in my particular area. And you're just thinking why the fuck aren't we allowed to strike the planes, to strike the jets, to strike the bases where they fly, the aviation flies, to throw the bombs at the city? And that has, I think it's kind of poisoned a lot of people's it's a bit poisoning to the soul, I guess you could say, because you have that resentment building up, which I do try to fight and to be grateful and to be still hopeful and try to be as kind as I could possibly be to others, to people here, to people abroad, everywhere. But at the same time, that resentment is difficult to fight, because it's a very corrosive sort of thing, and you can't help but think it. You are bombed, and you just go there and you think it's just deeply unfair, deeply unjust, and it's just it eats away at you. And I think it turned many people, unfortunately, towards being not hateful, but at the very least resentful towards many Western allies, in particular the US as well. And then the whole thing with the Trump came about, and there was a lot of anxiety there of how his policies will affect us, in which way it will go. But it kind of is going how I personally thought it will be. So that wasn't a surprise or anything, or a shock as it was to many people. But yeah, I would say that's overall politics and other countries affect our mood even more so than the war itself currently.
Let's get into some of those, because specifically with Western nations and the US, that had been a major point that held Ukraine back, like you said, from striking at jets, which now that you've been able to, Cobb bombs are what, practically non-existent around here
That
now?
yeah, because of the strikes, but also because of our own jamming technology that we kind of like don't take from anyone. We just made it ourselves, and that jamming technology also works. Usually, people use it on like on drones and things of that sort, but they also work on CABs, glide bombs, specifically because they are controlled aviation bombs. So they are also have something you can jam. So the signal then jams and they just fall without hitting the city before they hit the city, essentially. So that also helped out a lot because you can't really rely on systems that our allies provide because, first of all, it's unreliable, and second of all, they provide them in a very small quantities that are just not enough to cover anything but Kiev, for example, right? So because of that, you have to rely on other things, and they do work, those things. So yeah, props to our dudes, I guess, and for ingenuity and for trying to find the ways, worm their ways out of extremely difficult position we're in.
There's somebody in Kyiv actually asked me what I had noticed as a foreigner coming here and how a change in Ukrainian society had been taking place. And the thing that I brought up was there's a lot more self-reliance that seems to be in place, that people are willing to go, okay, we don't need you guys, or we need you guys, but if you're not going to give it to us, we're just going to do it ourselves.
I would say we still need you like more than ever, to be honest. It's non-negotiable that you can't win the war against the country 30 times your size without substantial support. But at the same time, you have to really, install that feeling of relying on yourself because of just how inconsistent the support has been. It can be halted just by some political things that happened in the United States when the Congress, for example, was halting the aid for Ukraine for like
it was like 7 months?
Yeah, half
months?
a year,
Yeah.
something like that, right? So because of that, you can really, it's not sustainable, and it's also not a sturdy supply that you can rely on, because you need to plan everything. You need to know like how many shells for this particular weapon I have, right? And I have like, I don't know, like 200, and this will last me for like 2 months, for example, or a month, right? And you can't make even calculations like that in our position, specifically because of how inconsistent the supply is.
You'd mentioned the original U.S. freeze to Ukrainian aid. It was 2023 to 2024, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little about the politicalization that you've seen of your country, of this war, from something that the U.S. seemed to universally stand behind, now not?
Well, the main shift, of course, is now visible because people in highest position of power, Trump himself, people close to him, like ministers of defense, intelligence directors, whatever, right? Highest positions of power are straight up spitting Russian propaganda, and they're straight up spitting lies about Ukraine that are just basically from Russia Today, but in English. So in that sense, that's a change in my opinion, because it was annoying and kind of frustrating to deal with that when it was just media people, bloggers, YouTubers, podcasters, things like that, right? They have people like with large followings, like Tim Pool, for example, right, who was proven to be taking Russian money, right?
Actually
So,
paid,
yeah. So that's obviously right. Also has been difficult to deal with, and it has affected us in negative ways. But because it also affects people in the United States and how they vote, right? And in that sense, of course, but now it's just not just like a media person. It's just straight up like highest people in positions of power are anti-Ukraine actively, or are sympathetic towards Russia, or straight up pro-Russia as well. So in that sense, of course, that changed, and it also makes it difficult to trust anyone at all, to be honest, because even if the people in the United States themselves didn't really change as much, like half the country, for example, like supports us, half doesn't, right, or something like that. It's not significant change, I'd say, amongst the population, as polls show, but it is a significant change in government, in actual officials and people who basically run the country, right? And they are the ones at the end of the day who are making decisions that impact lives in Europe and impact lives in Ukraine in particular, and maybe even in Asia as well, in terms of like Taiwan, for example, a situation there. So in that sense, I would say it is difficult to deal with, especially with how politicized like everything, and how much Ukraine has become just like another talking point in a sense that people in many people in the media and in politics in the United States speak about it as just Democrats did that bad, like Republicans did that bad. So it's like a talking point about Ukraine, but at the end of the day, it's always about themselves. So it's about Democrats, about like Biden, about things like that. But it's just something to throw at your opponent, essentially, to besmirch them some way. But it's not something that seems to be like actually what is that country going on, what's going on there, and how can actually we impact it, how can we help, assist, or anything. It's never about that. It's about the Biden who's weak, right? He didn't do anything, or like the opposite. He was trying to do World War III by helping Ukraine.
There's
or
some
like
conspiracy on
yeah,
either
yeah. So
end.
it's just about it, like in a conspiratorial sort of way, in a way that doesn't really talk about like Ukrainian lives, doesn't talk about what Russia is doing at the end of the day. Like I don't even remember if you haven't even heard Trump once mentioning like actual like war crimes, mentioning like anything that Russia did here. How many are registered at this point? 100,000 something crazy number, right? And it's just it's kind of like that, and people still talk about it as well as it's fucking 2014. Like, no offense to anyone, but I always hear people say like Crimea, Donbass, Crimea, Donbass, Crimea, Donbass, and you're like, damn, it's not 2014. Like, we have like Zaporizhia region occupied, we have Kherson region partially occupied, we have Kharkiv region again partially occupied, small, but they did insurgents, right? So we have like a lot of things going on. We have like Sumy region, we have constant shell and bombing of, for example, these parts of the city as well. There's even Chernihiv region is like constant bombing. It's like a lot of things, right? And it's not about they're not holding just Crimea right now and part of Donbass. They're holding about 20% of our territory. Yes, Kiev region has been liberated, although nobody even mentions that now, that they actually occupied basically north, like almost up to Kiev. And that's Kharkiv region was entirely almost like taken, but then liberated, right? So it's just a little bit. Kherson itself, right, as well, was liberated, but part of the region, the oblast, is still occupied. And it's just it's a very strange conversation you have with people about things that Nuland fucking cookies or something of that sort. Like, it's a conversation about legitimacy of President Yanukovych, like things that literally nobody gives a fuck about and are absolutely irrelevant to the current situation, instead of talking about actual right now what they're doing, right? So that's kind of the biggest frustration, I feel like, for most people.
There's a story you told me, I don't know if you want to share it on camera, from I believe it was late 2023 when the aid freeze was in and you were talking with a soldier on the front. I don't know if you'd be willing to share that.
Yeah, it's a story that kind of like I think it's a small story that depicts the bigger picture, I think. So there was a certain person I was talking quite a bit about with and about as well. And he was I, as a volunteer, usually just have a couple of a dozen or something people I usually chat with from the frontline soldiers who I interact with, and who they say like, oh, how it's going, what's up, like how's the situation, right? And then they write up, for example, we need this and that, we need like, I don't know, like power banks, we need drones, we need thermal wear, something, right? And you as a volunteer, you get it and you provide it, kind of how it works in general principle. And with some people you get a little bit closer, specifically because you speak with them more or you met them multiple times and things like that. Sometimes when they have time out of the trench, they will like share memes or two, that's basically how it goes. And there was this one person that I was, I would say, like particularly attached to, and we like cared a lot about each other, I feel like. And so is what happened is that last time I went to see him was exactly when was the time of the freeze of aid, and there was a lot of anxiety on the front. We had like something that was called a shell hunger, or like bullet hunger, some say, but we had basically a huge lack of actual munitions to shoot. So we had the weapons, but we didn't have like the actual shells to stuff the weapon with and shoot them at the enemy. And Russia always has shell superiority compared to us. So there were commands given to soldiers on the front to basically do the economy regime. So do not spare them at all. They just only use them in absolutely like utmost dire situations. And I think anyone with a couple of brain cells to rub together can understand that that led to deaths of people, because that led to them holding on to weapons until there's like literally no other way. So because of that, I believe what happened is that when I visited like him and his team, and everyone was like very down in terms of like spirits and everything. And I had the last conversation I had with them was like, he asked essentially like, will they abandon us? What do you think? Because of the, the people, you talk with them, like, will they leave us? And I said no, because I was, saying no, of course not. I said that it's temporary, temporarily stop of aid, but it will continue. It's just like a hurdle, obstacle, let's say, on the way. And I didn't lie, but I wasn't like as sure as I made it sound, because I was also worried that we are being abandoned, and I was also worried that just like them, that that our situation is getting worse. But I just didn't want to like add to the already existent feeling of apathy and all of that. So, but he knew me quite well at that point, and I think he kind of heard that I don't have like that much conviction behind my words. So yeah, that was basically our last conversation. And the last thing he said is that already when I was going to the car, and the last thing he said was that he's getting exceptionally like tired, and there's no rotation, and that he is slagging basically sometimes on the front, and he feels like he's making like mistakes and things like that. So he's a little bit worried about that and his condition and everything. So yeah, and that was last time I spoke with him. And next time I think it was like I don't know, I don't remember so much, but I think it was like a week or something like that after we spoke. And I got a message from another guy in the battalion who took his place after he was killed. And he reported to me via WhatsApp message that he was killed on the front, which I kind of suspected because he wasn't answering anything. But at the same time, sometimes people don't answer for a while because there's no connection. So I was like 50-50 basically on that, whether he's dead or whether he was killed, or he just doesn't have a connection. But it was confirmed that he was basically killed by artillery shot. And yeah, so that's kind of like an actual story of a person who, in like a smaller scale, I'm not saying that obviously the lack of aid killed him, Russia killed him, but it's something that is difficult to deal with, because you have like those people you care about, brothers, like fathers, loved ones, friends, right on the front, and sometimes you just have nothing good to say to them, and you want to lift them up, and you want to somehow give them that sort of something to hold on to, something to believe in, essentially, and you really can't without like lying, basically. So yeah, I obviously don't regret hyping him up.
Yeah.
but yeah, it's quite difficult. It's a difficult time, and it's more difficult when you actually deal with it in person in a way that is losing people and dealing with a lot of loss and dealing with a lot of like that resentment building up. And yeah, you just I think it's very important, although I will say for people in Ukraine, me in particular, but everyone, to not let it as much as we can drown us in this sense of resentment and grief and all of that. We need to be we need to still smile, still hype everyone up, and still be like the strong person, because there are a lot of people who are dealing with that, even civilians, right, who are dealing with it. It's much more difficult for them than for others. So people who can put themselves by the bootstraps, I think, is the phrase that people use in the United States. People should do it, definitely, yeah. So if you can smile through your fucking tears or something, just do it, because you need to be strong for people who cannot be. So I think that's something you should really do. And yeah, I try to, at least, as much as I can.
Speaking about that resentment that creeps in, you spoke about how it's important to stay positive, but I want to specifically ask for not only the aid freeze that was under Biden by the Republicans, not only for Trump withholding intelligence now and actual military aid and threatening to go all sorts of ways. What is the perception right now of the US, of US policy in Ukraine?
That is difficult to answer in a sense, because it depends obviously on people, on who you talk to. But I feel there's overall a sense of disappointment, a sense of feeling a lack of trust, and that doesn't apply just to Ukraine. It applies, I think, to all Europe right now. And there is a sense of dread, I think, of the United States allying with Russia full stop. There is a sense of dread because of the potential dissolvement, for example, of NATO if United States decides to step out of it. And also the United States clearly abandoning their role as the protector of the Western world. Like the hegemony is kind of falling apart, specifically because of the, I guess you could say, broader isolationism, but also that has been piling up in the United States, both on the left, on the right, like all over the place, honestly. But with Trump in particular, his administration, and the infamous one speech on the, in front of European Assembly.
At the Munich Security Conference.
Yeah, Munich Conference. So it's just overall they have been signaling as hard as they fucking can. As also leaked with the leaked messages that they added a journalist into their secret giga conference, secret chat about war plans of bombing Houthis. So all of that is, you can clearly see there is disdain towards Europe. There is this pathetic and all of that language, and there is language of people who want to paint for the American people, all Europeans, as these freeloaders that are just freeloading on American people, and they are like a parasitical almost like relationship that is not mutually beneficial for both United States and Europe and Canada and allies in the Western world, right? But it is this like a freeloading parasitic relationship that United States is being treated poorly, very poorly, as some might say, like Trump says, right? And so that's, I think, is a very dangerous and a very malicious effort on part of the new government in the United States to pull America away from this 80-year-long allies, right, established especially after World War I, right, when all the Lend-Lease and the payment and the assistance that the United States provided to Europe, and to put a wedge essentially in that relationship at the very least. And I don't think it's good for anyone involved, not for Europe, not for United States, but I know who it is good for. It is good for Russia, for China, it is good for Iran, for all the enemies of both the United States and the Western world as a broader concept. For them, it's their wet dream, right, of people like Dugin, Putin, people like that, right, to destroy NATO protection over Europe so they can have an easier time invading and expanding their imperialist ambitions, right? And also it's, of course, destroying the United States from within has been their like number one idea, by sowing dissent, by sowing a lot of aggression between people themselves, right? To put like two sides of the spectrum of left, right, like Democrats, right-wingers, right, Republicans, to put a wedge between the people in the United States and make them see each other as the enemy and not. That's why you get this unbelievably cringe interview that people did. I don't remember the person who did it, but they did the interview, trust more. Like and right-wing Americans, Trumpists, were asked like, who would you vote for, like a left candidate or like in America, so fellow American person like Biden, right, or Kamala or something like that. Would you vote for them or rather for Vladimir Putin, right?
It was Putin.
And they fucking picked Putin. That's how bad it got. So they will trust a foreign adversary, enemy country dictator that is a war criminal on the ICC list, right? Rather than a fellow American who, yes, sure, has political disagreements, maybe like moral disagreements as well with you, but the fact that people would rather trust Putin over a Democrat person, it's absolutely mind-blowing, and it shows just how effective and how lucky, I guess you could say, it is for Russia that they managed to put that wedge so hard into American people, and that's pretty scary for most people, because you really don't want to the biggest army, the biggest country, the most influential country for now. Don't know how long it will last with this trajectory, but to be allied with the country that is aggressing upon Europe and is aggressing upon other countries and has this imperialist expansionist drive that they never hide, and they openly, perform actions for everyone to see. So yeah, that's pretty rough. I don't know what to say. Yeah, pretty rough times. And I would say many people, I will say, if you ask about the attitudes towards United States and how people actually feel, and there's a lot of, like I said, anxiety and things like that, but I think the saddest bit is, I told you about that, since you are a journalist, that I never was asked before questions like by soldiers or like by other volunteers. Like I would say, I'm bringing an American person, and they'd be like, yeah, sure, hell yeah, bring him, American Eagles, yeah, freedom, So people by default assumed that journalists from America who came to Ukraine would be pro-liberty, would be pro-freedom, would be pro-democracy, would be supporting a victim of aggression rather than the aggressor, right? And now that assumption of innate goodness, never mind how naive and how like childish it may seem to some people, it's gone. It's gone. It's completely destroyed in a matter of like a month, basically, which is kind of crazy if you think about it, because the good guys assumption is no longer there. Now people ask, American, you say, are they Trumpists? Are they pro-Russian? Are they safe to bring to the positions? Will they give our information to unreliable parties in the United States? Will they give our information straight up to Russians? Tulsi Gabbard, hello. Yeah, so all of that is just, there's no default good guys momentum, wrong. I don't think you have it anymore, and that's pretty fucking wild, because you had it for such a long time, damn near a century here in this part of the world, right? And now in like a matter of literally weeks, it was just crushed. So
next question, where is your suit?
Sorry, no suit. I actually wanted to wear, unironically, a dress.
Oh yeah.
But I ended up being like, I'm so comfortable, and it's my home, so I'm so comfortable in my like sweatshirt combo, and I'm like, I don't wanna. I just put some earrings on, and it shall do. It shall do for the fancy. So yeah, it's just the suit thing is definitely something that sticks to many minds, especially the disasters like Oval Office with Zelensky thing. It was difficult to watch, I must say. I thought I was used to American stuff by this now, and I thought I was used by the whole circus, over-the-top, performative nature of American politics, but it was difficult to watch, even for me, because it was so disrespectful, so blatant about the things we already know, that the West in particular, but America, even Europe, Western Europe, that they treat us as lesser, Eastern Europeans, and they treat us as expendable, and they treat us as something that is not quote unquote worth it in terms of like protecting us or helping us or even accepting us in their realm of the cool kids, right? So because of that, it has been a history of that since World War II, a lot of backstabbing before World War II as well, actually, but the major parts of it, right? Backstabbing us and throwing us basically to the wolves, to all sorts of dictators, whether it's fascism, communism, whatever, right? Selling us out, right? For appeasement purposes or for the purposes of bettering the relationships with the said dictators, like authoritarian people, whether it was now or then, right? And there is already that history, but people kind of like were striving so much to be part of the West that they weren't really holding that much of a grudge in the 21st century. They were like mostly just trying to be worthy, to be good enough to be accepted, right? And that's on everyone's mind. Countries like, for example, Romania, Ukraine, right? We are really even Poland before it was like accepted to the European Union, right? And all of that. All of us are kind of trying to deal with the legacy of the Soviet Union and Russia, influence of Russian Empire as well, right? Of the corruption it produces, over non-working institutions, over oligarch control of everything. Like everyone is trying like their fucking hardest to kind of like get away from all of that and to have a more decent, more better lives, the lives that I think people do deserve here, but they don't have them, right? Some basic shit like people in the West have that we just are not afforded to. And that, in my opinion, is unfortunate because it's just a question of luck at the end of the day where you were born, right? And it's not something you achieved in a sense because you just were there, right? And some people are more fortunate than other people in that sense. But it also, as a person now, is your kind of duty, I think, to make your contribution to betterment of the society and to being deserving truly of that place in the democracies and liberties and freedom of speeches and human rights and all of that, right? So that's something that many people are completely comfortable like accepting, but it's not about, we know we suck, okay? We know we're not the same as you. We know we're poor, we're economically less valuable, we are we have corruption problems, we have problems that we're not up to the standard of Western Europe in terms of like human rights and things like that yet, I guess. And all of that is true, but at the same time, it's just it's just one thing to know it and to be realistic about it, and it's a completely different thing to be so blatantly basically put in the dirt, right, by other people and saying like, yeah, you have no right to even speak over here, shut the fuck up, nobody cares what you think, you're not in position, right? And that position is it's just something that I think offended many people, especially from Trump administration specifically, because it's something we fought so hard against even during Maidan revolution times, right? Not to grovel for the people that don't respect us, our own government at the time, right, and Russia as well, not to grovel before rich fucks and like oligarchs and let them step all over us. That was one of the truly the motivators, right, of the Maidan revolution and things like that. And it's just pretty sad to see that the history it's just the same. It like didn't change. So many people thought that it was a thing of the past, being thrown to the wolves. Right now, it's people in the West are willing to throw us to Russia just like that again, like they did, for example, with Czechoslovakia during before World War II started, with the Sudetenland occupation of the, and they also said France and Britain at the time were like, yeah, Hitler would just stop. He will not take like anything further than Sudetenland. Just give them Sudetenland with German speakers. Similar story in so many ways. Yeah, and Czechoslovakia was like, I mean, kind of like lame, we don't want to do it, and everyone's like, hey, fuck you don't have a choice. Yeah, so that's basically like the guarantors, the protectors, what's their worth at the end of the day. It's just words, it's promises and just assurances that don't work. And when really Zelensky demanded sort of like this something else, right? He didn't even demand, I would say. He just kind of like actually highlighted the position of Ukrainian people that we don't want that. We don't want repeating of that. We want some sort of actual guarantees of our future security. And we have every right to be cautious because we have been backstabbed, double-stabbed, triple-stabbed by West multiple times. If we only a real fool now will believe in any sort of words and assurances at this point in history, whether it is Budapest Memorandum or whether it is history of World War II we just mentioned, right? So yeah, and you apparently are not allowed to question anything. You just have to give your minerals and your 500 billion, whatever the fuck the cost for your like resources in your country in exchange for absolutely nothing. Right. And you should smile and be grateful, and you should grovel and kiss the fucking boots of the people who do it for some reason. And I think it really hit people's nerve much more than average American thinks, probably.
Absolutely, yeah. I would agree. From everyone I've talked to here, that's the exact same thing I've heard. It's this pain of anger. It's this.
Yes, reminder. it's just it's one thing to know we are treated as lesser, as like subhuman, essentially, right? But it's a completely different thing to be so blatantly, publicly bullied, humiliated, and told in your face that that's how you're treated. So it's something that usually is kept like hush-hush in closed doors in political world, right? But Trump is not a sophisticated, or he doesn't have a much finesse, let's say, right? So it was done in the most blatant and obvious way, and it kind of, I think, broke some hearts from people who have been still coping that that's not how we are seen. And I think most people now are sure that that's exactly how we are treated, and that's how we will be treated, no matter essentially what.
Did that in some way revitalize people out here, or inspire people to do more, to fight harder again? Was it a rallying point?
I'd say so, yeah, because there was a lot of like dejected feeling, like I said, like apathy, things like that. But it definitely hyped Zelensky up, I can tell you that much. Like in terms of like Zelensky's approval grew quite a lot by multiple percentages. I think it's somewhere up to 60 something 70 now by the stats, the recent polls. So it really did bring him back to people's favor. Somewhere he was like sort of like half the country was kind of cool with what he's doing, half the country was like, he was like a particularly like hated or anything, but he was approved by majority of people before this whole debacle with Trump. But afterwards, many people just who actually hate him, I saw a lot of people who are like from my circle who are like not biggest fans of Zelensky, have a lot of critique towards him. They voted for Poroshenko, for example, instead of him, or something of that sort, right? Which is questionable now, but back in the day. And they're now, this like orange fuck, how dare he, our Zelensky, and they never spoke like that about him ever, right? So that's definitely something. It's just something you can rile up for, basically, when you have like this sort of adversary situation happening, but also people are obviously worried about the aid and things like that, and whether Trump will support us in any way, shape, or form, or we will help proceed to push us to basically capitulate, but also give them the money.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yes, anyways.
yeah. I'm kind of like of the opinion that we can surrender on our own. Like, thank you very much, but I think we can do it just without the fucking mediator of the United States, right? United States is supposed to be our ally. It's supposed to be our guarantor, quote unquote, via Budapest Memorandum of our sovereignty, right? And I don't think we need a guarantor to guarantee our surrender. That's just my opinion on the matter. Yeah, so in that sense, I think many people see that as a basically extortion for, well, nothing. So in that sense, I don't think it's a good deal. Let's put it like that. And yeah, I'm not sure like anyone will be forgetting that anytime soon. Even if something changes and the political shift will happen. Also, like for example, them threatening to Elon and other people to turn off Starlink, for example, right, is something that is on everyone's mind quite a bit, because people are trying to find alternatives now for Starlink desperately. And also like people, I don't remember which country exactly, but a couple of European countries denounced their F-16 programs, I believe, because they were just like, well, if they can turn off their tech in the most inopportune times, then how can you really rely on them? We can't trust our security to people who are unreliable allies, right? And maybe that will bring some change to Europe. That's everyone's hope, I guess, that they will actually take their defense more seriously, and they will take the, most importantly, production of arms and munitions more domestically, so not to rely so much on United States. But I'm not that I'm not that positive about it, I will be honest, because I think Europe is also like very much like in the bureaucracy era, in a sense that it takes 500 years to make one single decision, and you can have like one little Orban, one little Russia's bitch, essentially, just can veto the entire fucking voting process, and that's and they for 3 years haven't managed to put him to heel. So I don't know, how effective they will be, but at least we have like Merz instead of Scholz in Germany, who seems to be like, who seem to be showing some balls, and that's already better than anything else we had prior. So also, AfD didn't win in Germany, no matter how much Russia and Elon tried to make it happen. Yes. But so that's something to be happy about, I suppose.
You mentioned about replacing Starlink and looking for alternatives. You recently did a fundraiser to try to get one of these alternatives to remove from Starlink and almost have a European alternative. How has this last 2 years, been for your volunteering efforts, for your fundraising efforts?
To me, it wasn't particularly different, to be honest, because I think it's just going about as it was, as it was before. Some people were extra stimulated actually by the fuck Trump and Elon and all of that like situation. Like many people said, like if our government doesn't want to support you, it doesn't mean that the people don't want to support you, and they still proceeded to donate and to help out, which is obviously everyone is super grateful for that, because at the end of the day, yes, people, it does matter, obviously, just people support. But it also is worth noting that as much as people are lovely and they support us and it really helps, it saves lives, right? But also you can't really fundraise for HIMARS, or you can't really fundraise for a tank or a F-16, right? Or Starlink if Elon decides to cut it off, although we pay for it, by the way. Not even us, Poland primarily, but that's a whole other situation. But yeah, it's a difficult situation. It shouldn't be so. I don't think you should be by rights so anxious about whether your allies are reliable and whether you be cut off from essential services that the entire front line depends on, just on a whim of a richest man alive in this, just oh.
Last time we did our interview, when talking about Ukraine getting territory back potentially, having all of the victory, you were rather hopeful for it. Do you still see that as a possibility now?
I think we spoke after Kharkiv offensives and Kherson, I think, offensives. Mm-hmm. So it was a counteroffensive. So it was a kind of like I guess you could say, hyped time, in the sense of our biggest victories and our biggest liberation of the territories and everything. Now is a different time, obviously. And I, as many Ukrainians, obviously don't want to do any sort of concessions just on principle, because it's our land that other people occupy. So it's quite an easy concept, I think, to understand. But as far as like actual practical reality goes, I think it's difficult to say. And if some people at this point in time don't really believe as much in total victory and return to 1991 borders, like when we became fully quote unquote independent, right? So people want it, obviously, but as far as like reality and how practical that is, many people of course doubt that it's possible, considering we have troubles we have like people shortages, we have weapon shortages, we don't know if we can rely on our fucking allies, we have a lot of things. Russia can rely on their allies much better, whether it is North Korea that actually joined the fight, whether it is supplies from Iran, with particularly Shahed drones that are nightmare fuel and terror city like everywhere, right? So all of that, the missiles, everything, right? China covertly supporting them, obviously, right? All of that is difficult. And I think if there was like steady, reliable, actually high quality support for Ukraine, people would be much more hyped for actually trying to achieve our goal of fully returning our lands and our people back. But as is, you have to be like, more, I guess, hate the word, but more realistic in that sense. But also at the same time, I will point out that we did support, most people support some form of negotiations, which polls show, and people exploit those points to make a retarded, to make bad points, about Ukraine. But at the end of the day, people, yes, majority people supported some sort of negotiations, but not capitulation. And most definitely not the kind of terms that Russia gives us now through Trump, right? It was, most people don't even support concessions. Yeah. Not big ones, at least, right? So it's just that people really do not support giving up and just freezing the line and letting Russia in 5-year time be much better prepared and just rail us over, while our allies be like, here's your assurance, everything will be based. So nobody believes in that assurance. You can wipe your ass with those assurances, and you should, actually. So in that sense, I'd say that people, of course, are thinking in their mind about what we were willing to give. And if, for example, it's not something I, for example, appreciate, but if some people would be like, yeah, we would probably give like Crimea, but in exchange for NATO memberships or something of that sort, like some sort of proper security guarantee, or like a signed document from Germany's, from France's, from Britain's, from all of them, right, of saying if you get attacked again, we will military support you with like actual troops or some shit, right? So actual like sturdy military guarantee. Not that if you get attacked, we will wish you good luck, basically, but actual like guarantee that will prevent future Ukrainians suffering from what we suffered. So we all now accept that our lives are fucked. They're like perma-fucked. Nothing is going to change that. And even if the war ends, we all have PTSD. We all have like fucking tons of trauma and things. I don't know, like if we ever be like happy, carefree, or anything like that again, right? But we will fine with that. That's fine. We accepted that. But worst thing imaginable for me is thinking about other people living through the same thing, right? And already we have children that lived 3 years of full scale, right? And since 2014. For now, like more than 10 years now, right, of war, right? And I really, the worst thing is to imagine this happening again, and us failing, and all the people who sacrificed their lives, all the people who lived through it, all the people who died through it, all the soldiers, everyone who volunteered to help out, for their death, for their sacrifice, for their lives being thrown away for nothing. It is acceptable, and it is painful but bearable to think about their lives if they were for liberation of Ukraine, if they were for preserving this nation, if they were for defending our people, right? But if all of that death was just for us to be sidelined and then attacked in 5 year time and stopped existing, as by the way, very nice of Trump to point out that he's like, well, I don't know if Ukraine will exist like in the future, like why should they worry about the future? And like, my man, future is the only thing we worry about. We don't worry about the now, we worry about the future. That's what everyone worries about. I like how that one of the Vitkov or some kind of guy, I don't remember, he was like, well, you know, there's like maybe it wasn't him, but I think it was him. Okay. But either way, one of the fucking Trump administration, whatever, right? They were like, well, these Ukrainians, you know, they're like, you know, simple-minded, like barbarians. So they're like that mule you have to hit in the face to see reality, right? And it's just...
That was General Kellogg.
Oh, Kellogg, yeah, that's the guy. Yeah, and the other guy was like, well, you know, they're like just, they don't think about the future. They just think about the past. Americans are practical. We are pragmatic. We're thinking about the now and the future. And these Europeans, you know, these oldies, they're stuck in the old grudges, quote unquote, which is kind of funny because, oh my God, this is my guy. It's really not about the old grunge. It's about reality, actually. We are actually thinking about the future. It's you who don't give a fuck about the future because you refuse us any sort of security guarantees. So anyone who today in Ukraine thinks about guarantees, they don't think about themselves, because if they were egotistical like some other people, they would be like, yeah, anything to stop the war now. I don't want to be bombed. I don't want to fucking hide in shelters. I don't want additional gray hairs, which I do have now, to not, like, you know, I want to live just a normal life. I want the shooting to stop. That's selfish. That's egotistical. What's not egotistical is thinking about the future people who we want to protect. And think about the people who are now in occupation, and people who are suffering from torture, imprisonment, rape, and all of the stuff that Russia is doing in occupied regions, and the people who want those people to be liberated and to be free from that. That's not selfish, and it's not egotistical, and it's not vindictive, and it's not a grudge. It's a righteous thing to do. So yeah, that's just... sorry, I am mad. If you didn't notice. Really? Yeah, I am mad. It's quite angering, yeah. So in that sense, of course, I am... I think righteously miffed about the things that current administration in the United States has both said and did. So we shall see how that plays out. I personally think nothing will happen. As you see yourself here in Kharkiv, how respected the ceasefire is.
You're right, quote unquote ceasefire.
Yeah,
right?
Ceasefire, that such a big victory for Trump. His administration is like, oh, he managed to do something a Biden could never do. He talked with Putin, and everyone's like, yay, how cool, nobody cares. Yeah, so like Russia doesn't care, we don't care, like Europe doesn't care, like literally nobody. Besides Trump and his his like administration and his supporters who think he's the best thing ever created by the God himself, I guess. Yeah, but it's just nobody cares. It's a joke. It's not a serious thing. Nobody takes it with any sort of seriousness. I don't know about Trump though, whether he takes it with seriousness or not. It's hard to tell for me.
Thank you very much for sitting down and talking about a little bit about the last 2 years and kind of what's happened. Is there anything you want to end us off with?
End this off. Probably would end this off on a bit of a better note than just the one that was now. I think it's just still incredibly awesome, despite everything that happened, to see, for example, people like Devin here who are not only care so much, but they also invest so much of their life, of their time, of their best years essentially, to be stuck in a place that is so troubled, the place that is dangerous in physical way, in like all sorts of way. Like, for example, Devin stayed at the place, I booked him an apartment, and he stayed at the place that Shahed drone basically damn near bombed. It was like a road away, like
down the
down the
road.
road. And so it's quite dangerous, and I want really people to understand. Just some journalists and some people who come here, they come here for, I don't know, just the thrill of it, I guess, or they're trying to find purpose. Some of them are just trying to, I don't know, chill the fuck out and have cheap drinks, I guess. So that's also true. But a lot of people who came here and who do journalism and who cover and who want to make Ukrainian voices in particular to be heard, which are still, in my opinion, are wildly underrepresented in the big media. For example, my appearance on Piers Morgan was super cool, and I, very much appreciate them having me on. But I think I was either the one or the second Ukrainian they had through the entire time. So they have speaking about Ukraine endlessly, like all the time, right? And they have like one or two people at best from Ukraine, or even I don't. If you don't want to keep Ukrainians, okay, Eastern Europeans, what do they know about their own Eastern Europe, obviously? What do they know about Russia? Nothing.
No.
But if at least just have people that know, people that are journalists, people who are on the ground, people like David, people like Dylan Burns, people like... they have Jake Bro, I think, who actually is quite good in what he said. Like people like that who actually know what the fuck they're talking about for once. And so I will say that we need to hype people up like that. And a lot of people are doing like Russian propaganda, doing it for money, obviously call themselves journalists, quote unquote. But they get so much coverage, so much more, in my opinion, attention, unfortunately, than people who are actually doing real journalist work. And I would say that now it's more important than ever for the United States to find ways to counter foreign malicious propaganda, Russian in particular, but overall. And just to find a way to somehow return to the idea that you can fight, you can have deep disagreements, or political, moral, but you should have each other's back first and foremost. So it's like this, like, me against my brother and I against my cousin, and me and my brother and my cousin against the world, right? So that sort of thing, I feel like keeps us from falling apart, unironically, despite how much internal like disagreement there is between Ukrainians. When it comes to a threat from the outside, we are united, and I think that's something that I wish Americans to return to. Honestly, because I think that both your country and its greatness and everything it was depends on it, but the world kind of also depends on it, unfortunately, because you are, this kind of like allegedly Uncle Ben. I know there's debate about it, but said with great, power comes great responsibility, whatever the fuck that was. Right?
Responsibility. You're so close.
Responsibility, right? So it's just, I'm not a Marvel fan, to be honest, but it's true, and I wish people would see, I guess, in the United States that their hegemony is not a burden. And it's not a favor they're doing to other people for nothing. It's both the power they hold, and it's both what elevated them to greatness that they are. So so I wish people would kind of see that and save us all from the trouble of seeing the empire falling apart again.
Right.
Because never works that great in historical context. And also it would be a spectacular spectacularly stupid way to lose hegemony, I must say.
Turn it into just Trump reality
Yeah,
show.
years after, like, why did you stop like being the most influential, most powerful, most country on earth? And like, we really wanted to fucking make those tariffs to Canada for no reason, and that kind of, did us in.
That was it.
Yeah. So it's just, I don't want that to be your story, okay? I really don't want you, like, Americans in the future telling their kids stories and like, Mom, why did we lost all of our power? And be like, well, we just had this like ketamine drug addict rule in the country for like a couple of months and making decisions that destroyed all of our credit that we built in 80 years.
That's assuming they wouldn't still blame Ukraine.
Yeah, oh, they will. Yeah. Oh, by that point, they will be so brainwashed that they will be Zelensky stole all of our money.
Stole my crops, yeah.
Yeah. So anyhow, yeah, I guess all of us should do a little better.